Well, hello everybody. Welcome to this special edition of Beto on Best Live. Good to see you guys. I hope you're having a great week. I hope you're having a great Thursday. It's a special Thursday in crypto land. It's a special Thursday for anybody that's holding crypto. I will obviously talk about that in a few seconds, but just wanted to say hello to you guys. Thank you for joining. If you're joining live, leave me a comment or send me a message on the live chat. I will definitely shout back at you. I really appreciate if you're joining live. If you're joining the recording, I also appreciate you. This is definitely a special stream. Normally, these streams are on Mondays at 7 p.m. Pacific. It's been a while since I've streamed, just life gets in the way, but I'm back at it. I'm back here especially today because it's a very interesting day in crypto. And especially during the bear market, it's hard to find positive stories, but today I will cover just with my thoughts and just some random stories that are surging after the Senate Banking Committee voted to move forward with the Clarity Act, which is obviously crypto legislation that is changing, will change if it's passed. It'll change the landscape of crypto in our space for many of us. 50 million people hold crypto in the United States, and that's only in the United States. Obviously, many, many more around the world. So for us here in the United States, this legislation important in many ways. Obviously, there are some things that are not good from this law, some things that are obviously positive for crypto and crypto holders. Today, what I want to do is this will be probably a 15 to 20 minute stream. I'm not going to keep you here forever. I'm not going to go on and on and on. I know everybody has lives, so I appreciate your time for hanging out. But I basically just wanted to get on here and just chat, right? And just talk about some of the things that happened today. I'll tell you right now in a couple of minutes what needs to happen for this to become a law. There's still some obstacles that need to be passed by this legislation or this bill, as we call it right now. And then I'll give you some of the trending stories that came out of today's vote in the morning for me in the Pacific time zone. And then at the end of the stream, in about 15 to 17 minutes, I'm going to give you my reason why I am now leaning very, very bullish in terms of this legislation to be signed in July. And the target for the White House is July 4th. On Independence Day. It would be fitting, right? Some people might find that funny. Some people might find it patriotic. Regardless, if that's the goal, I think that's a very ambitious goal. But I think now at this point, it's going to happen. I'll give you the reason why I think it's going to happen. It's going to pass the Senate, but I'll tell you what it needs to get through first in a couple of minutes. So again, welcome to Beto on Base Live. This is a special stream on Thursday after the great vote from the Senate Banking Committee pushing forward the bill, the Clarity Act, that will change legislation in its entirety. Let me get started with some of the stories and some of the things that came out from today's vote. And it was this morning, very early, and without drama. That never happened. So there was drama last night. There was, some discussions, obviously, from the people involved in terms of the language. And apparently they didn't reach an agreement before midnight. That was something that popped up in terms of my feed and news. And several sources were reporting that, there was an impasse in terms of both parties that were trying to get this to the Senate Banking Committee, all buttoned up and all that. Eventually, this morning before the actual meeting, there was also more discussion. And eventually it got, ready. It got tightened up and buttoned up, as they say, and it was brought forth for the Banking Committee. Eventually, there was a vote, and there was a vote of 15-9, which was very surprising to me. I thought this was going to be a very partisan vote. There's a couple of votes. I think it's 13-11, 13 Republican senators and 11 Democratic senators. And I thought, it was almost a slam dunk that it was going to get passed. But nothing is for certain in legislation in the Senate or the Assembly. Nothing is for certain. There's always the opportunity for somebody to pull back, somebody to change their tone, to change what they're, we're going to vote for. It's always a chess game that they're playing, and for them it's a game. For us, it's, we depend on what they're doing behind the scenes in closed doors. So there's usually discussion between, the senators or the representatives, and sometimes these deals or these bills can fall through and just, reach stalemate, and then nothing gets done. But Chairman Scott, he in this banking committee press release, calls it today. The banking committee showed the American people that Washington can still work together, and that's something that I'm really glad happened today. Whether you agree 100% with the bill or not, I think this is good, right? It says this legislation brings digital assets into the sunlight with clear rules, stronger safeguards, and better tools to stop bad actors. I think this is one of the most important pieces of the legislation, because we've seen what's happened over the last 2.5 years. And in many ways, crypto in this space is where it's at because of what's going on, because of what's gone on over the last 2.5 years. So much liquidity was extracted, so many scams, so many projects that, extract the liquidity in huge projects. And you can do your research, and some of you already know, if you're here, if you've been around for the last few years, you already know what I'm talking about. But if this is true, and if this, legislation is going to bring forth, rules and a way to enforce, right, some of these rules and stop these bad actors. Man, I was, when I got back into crypto, and some of you know my story, some of you, it's in my channel, in my YouTube channel, and this channel. By the way, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you feel like. I have my story, and look up that video. It's about how I got rugged, and it's maybe the way that many of us learn, right, our lessons in how how crypto was. I don't see that happening as much, maybe because there's not as much liquidity, there's not as much money moving around from project to project. There's still a bunch of rugs out there, but I focus a lot on base, not so much on base, but hey, it happens still. There's still some of that out there, and still people are going to try to do that. However, if this legislation is going to help in that respect, I think this is positive. So hopefully it does. Well, that's yet to be seen. But in the end, as Chairman Scott says, today is a historic day for this committee and for a major victory for the American people, especially those that hold digital assets. And one of the other really interesting stories that came out of today's vote was this clip by Senator Elizabeth Warren. Let me see if you can hear it. I'm going to try to play it for you. If not, I'll tell you what it is. But she says,
for investors and removes recourse for victims. That is the wrong direction to go in.
All right.
When this blows up the economy, I hope everybody remembers, it pushes more of the market into crypto and removes protections for investors.
That's what I wanted to get to. If you heard, it says it pushes more of the economy to crypto. So, two things. I don't think she's wrong, and she's getting a lot of flack, but that's not wrong. But that's because she's protecting the banks, right? She's protecting the establishment. She's protecting, the many huge banks, right? From, money and liquidity moving from the traditional banking system to crypto, because that's essentially what's going to happen. We hope, right? With the guardrails, with the structure, with a lot more things in place. I think that's what's going to happen. So she's essentially telling you the truth right there, and people are giving her flack. She's defending, think of whatever you want to think of her. She's defending the bank. She's on their side, and that's true. But if you, think about what she's saying, it pushes more of the economy into crypto. What does that mean? That means that liquidity, that means that money is going to flow into crypto. Now, look, is it going to flow into your meme coin? Is it going to flow into your, obscure altcoin? I don't know. There's always a chance. But the reality is, I think that this is now going to change things in terms of the projects that are legitimate. They're going to be further, elevated, and they're going to completely be legitimized, right? So a lot of projects that are good projects in crypto, including altcoins, and I'm not talking about, Bitcoin or Ethereum. Those two, they're not going anywhere. But a lot of the other altcoins, I think they're going to be legitimized, and they're going to be, stronger with this, right? On the other hand, on the other hand, there's a lot of projects that are just going to go bye-bye, right? A lot of projects are going to disappear. And you're seeing it right now in this bear market. A lot of projects are disappearing. It doesn't matter if they're meme coins. It doesn't matter if they're altcoins. It doesn't matter if they're, whatever they are, they're disappearing. Why? Because, a lot of these projects are crap. The reality, a lot of these projects have nothing to offer. A lot of these projects are just launched to, see if, poop or crap sticks on the wall. And in many ways, that's what it is. So this was just outstanding by, just the X and people getting that clip and just sharing it, because it's just funny, right? I think she was trying to, help the banks, and she was trying to, she's not wrong, but in the end, she's helping crypto at this point, because she's exactly stating what I think everybody wants and what everybody wanted from the Clarity Act. Now, one of the things that was interesting as well is that stocks rally, and specifically those stocks that were that are tied to crypto, some of those were rallying. The market was rallying. We'll see how far this goes. In my previous videos, I talked about how this might be a sell the news story. I think that we're still, I'm still waiting to see if that's going to happen. But obviously, this was not, going to send the market, mooning, right? We're still in a bear market, if anything. And I'll talk about Bitcoin in a couple of minutes as I get ready to wrap up in a little bit. I'll show you the chart, and I'll tell you what I think is going to happen, or what I see happening with Bitcoin in the next few days, especially after this vote. We're going to see maybe like a little bit of a euphoria rally because of what's going on. Some people jumping on board into crypto just because of the Clarity Act and where it's going. But the reality is that this is still not a law, right? This is still, this still has some obstacles to get by. And I think we're going to see some challenging, hurdles to get by in the next, weeks. There's still time for this to be sabotaged if somebody wants to. But like I said, at the end of the stream, I'm going to tell you why I think now I'm pretty bullish that this is going to get done and it's going to get signed in July if everything goes well. But I'm pretty certain that I've talked about this before, but we're looking at the odds, and I think prediction markets have the odds of the Clarity Act passing at around 60 to 70%. They're oscillating between those two numbers. And I think that for me, that's still a toss-up, right? If you think about it, odds that are, set in place by odds makers, they're not necessarily indicative of, what's going to happen. They're just setting the odds so that money or, money flows in both directions, right? If there's, it's almost like the house is setting the odds so that they profit. So it's not necessarily an objective view of how things are going to play out. So if it's the 60%, I still think it's about a toss-up. I think it's still 50%, but I think the odds are changing just because of something that I saw, and I'll share in a little bit. So the Clarity Act passed. The banking committee, the stocks were rallying. Some of the stocks that were rallying is BTR, Keel Infrastructure. They rallied 11% today, which was pretty cool. Hive Digital, I don't have any of these, by the way. Hive Digital, 8%. Crypto exchange Coinbase rallied 5%. And like the crypto platforms like Coinbase and others have just had a very bad start to the year. But that's obviously because of the bear market. I think they'll do fine. Coinbase has dropped over the last 6 months and had a very poor Q1. Hopefully Q2 is going to be a little bit better. That might be something that changes because of some of the inflows and some of the things that are going on with the market, and some of the liquidity kind of coming back. Retail, I think, is still gone, but some institutions are pouring money, and we'll wait to see what Q2 does for Coinbase. But that was just a 5% gain for Coinbase. And some other ones, Strategy, MSTR, some of you hold that, swung 5% higher, which is good for them. And then stablecoin Circle did a slid about 2%, which was odd. But anyway, Bitcoin for itself, and I'll talk about that, climb about 81,500, and I'll check the price right now for you as we get ready to wrap this stream up. So a couple more things to chat with you about. The Clarity Act, 50 million crypto holders are going to benefit, quote unquote benefit, if this passes. And this is where a lot of things, I think a lot of publications are making it seem like it's a done deal, even though I think it's a very good possibility. There's a very good possibility that this gets done. I think a lot of folks are also missing the point. They're already kind of mooning crypto. I think that's the wrong approach, right? I think that's the wrong approach, because look, this is going to take time. The moment it gets signed, it doesn't mean that everything's going to flow into crypto. There's a lot of things that need to happen. Liquidity also needs, look, first and foremost, we need the economy and we need things to, at the macro level, to get better, right? We need QT, that's hard to pronounce, QT to the easing to kick in. We still haven't seen it. I've seen some reports though that says takes some time before we start seeing the money printer help out. So there's a lot of things that I think we still need to see through, and even if it gets signed this year, it might not be this year where we really start seeing the impacts, but it could be at the end of the year, right? Q4. It could definitely be if it's signed in July. I'm definitely now leaning towards October being hopefully the bottom. If we see a bottom, maybe the bottom's in. I don't know for the crypto market. But still, I think a lot of folks are scared to invest, are scared to put money in the market just because of the geopolitical situation that we're living through. The war in Iran, gas prices are still, off the roof. There's a lot of things that are going on still that I think are going to hold this market down for a little while. But anyway, at least some of the things that are coming out of the Clarity Act moving forward are positive. The bill does, it says the Clarity Act establishes clear rules for separating which digital assets are securities and which are commodities. And I think that's one of the bigger things that it's going to be helping out. So, and then let me give you my last point here, and I guess let's call it the big five on Thursday, the big five stories on this Clarity Act Thursday, is that Democrats, and this is the big story, this is why I think I'm leaning now positive in terms of this bill being signed eventually at the Senate level. Two Democrats did vote today that are on the Senate committee, the Senate Banking Committee. They did vote for the Clarity Act. They had some discussions. They were against certain language, but they eventually they voted, right? They voted for it. They made it through. And let me make sure that my mic's, yeah, it's working. Eventually they voted for it. So I'm thinking here, this was bipartisan, truly. It was two, right? 2 out of the 11 senators on the banking committee that were Democrats voted for the Clarity Act to move forward. That's great. That's great news. And I'm going to, shout out to Senator Ruben Gallego from Arizona and Angela Alsobrooks from Maryland, I believe. Those were the 2 Democrats that voted for the Clarity Act to be moved forward. To me, that's positive. Now that it's going to the Senate, there's still probably going to be some amendments and some language that's going to be tweaked. That's from what I'm reading. And obviously, I'm not a legislation process guru or expert or subject matter experts. But from what I'm reading is that there might still be changes. And if there's no delay, it's going to get to the Senate near the end of May, probably June. I would say more closer to June. And eventually there's going to be a vote. It's going to be debated. There's going to be, back and forth. It might take a while. But if there's a vote, I truly believe that we have, or I say we because I'm interested in this getting passed. But for anybody that's supporting, all right, there needs to be 60 votes. Essentially, they would need, I believe, 7 from the Democratic side. Let me see if I can get the numbers correct. But they would need 7 from the Dems to make this official and get it to the president's desk. I do believe that they have those votes just because of what happened at the banking committee. The fact that we have 2 Democrats that voted for the legislation, despite some of their, some of their objection to some of the language in terms of ethics, to me, that's bullish. I think that's great. I think that means that, this legislation is not one of those legislations that's just going to fracture everything and just going to make, all Democrats say no, right? If you've been around enough, you know that, there's a lot of BS that goes on when it comes to legislation, and some of these folks that are elected, sometimes they'll just vote down the party line. But this one, I'm thinking that this is good, right? I'm thinking that these 2 folks that voted for from the dem side, I think it's definitely something that's positive. So I'm excited to see what's going to happen as we get closer to that. I definitely say stay tuned. Like I said, if you are interested in this sort of stuff, if you just want to make sense of what's going on, that's me. I'm just documenting the journey right here on crypto, documenting some of the things that I'm seeing. By far, I'm not an expert, but I like to just interpret things the way I see them, and I think I like to do that so that others can also learn and just follow this journey and get better at understanding what crypto is and crypto's doing, and some of the things that are influencing kind of where we are, especially if you've been around for the last few years and you're still around after the shitty conditions that we're seeing currently, even though there's always opportunity even in the bear market. But anyway, that's kind of what I'm seeing. Hopefully now we'll get to that. Hopefully we'll get the 60 votes. So whenever it's brought forth to the Senate for that vote, and we'll keep you posted here on what's going on with this Clarity Act and just other news here on this channel. So let me take a quick look at Bitcoin for you guys. It did rally to 81,500. It's down now at 80,861 at the time of recording this video. And this is the chart that I'm looking at. This is the one, the daily chart for Bitcoin. It's been kind of broke out of the downtrend that it had been seen since October 10th, when we had that huge liquidation event a while back. It broke that trend just a while back already, that we were seeing. But I think there's still, look, and I'm not a negative person, but I think I'm still seeing maybe some downside coming in the near future. Let me give you maybe why. It's been struggling to break this. The higher highs are just, kind of having issues, right? Also, one of the things that I'm seeing is just very, very small volume right there. And I'm also taking a look at this just rejection area right here. If you can see that, it keeps rejecting that trend line. It did it earlier in the year. It fell through at the end of January, all the way down to about 60,000. It started climbing. It's been doing well. It's this rally that we've been seeing over the last few weeks that started around the beginning of April, and we've seen just a growth in terms of Bitcoin. It's back up above $80,000. But look, I'm telling you, this is just what I'm seeing. I don't know if it's gonna hold. I would expect maybe for let me show you kind of what I think it's going to do. And like I said, I'm not, a negative person, but I think it's going to, somehow it's going to end up with negative news and just kind of going to do this and maybe eventually fall down back into this accumulation zone and do something like that. And then eventually those two circles that I have right there are just targets that I would assume that I'm, kind of seeing that, if Bitcoin's there, the lower one is just very dramatic. And this is all because their support at that level. But I think the upper circle might be more likely, and this is October, right? I'm basing this, and I'm, back and forth. Some people don't think that the 4-year cycle is relevant at this point, just because everything that's happened and things change. But until it's proven wrong, if October comes around and the market is already rallying and it's not the bottom, then definitely I'll say, hey, the 4-year cycle's done. But Bitcoin historically has taken about a year from the peak to the bottom, and then eventually the market changes, or Bitcoin starts a new bull run, and that would be around October 6th, something like that, an exact year since the top, which was October 6th. For you. So anyway, that's kind of what I'm seeing. That's kind of what's going on with the market. That's kind of what's going on with crypto. Hopefully, like I said, you had a good day, and hopefully you enjoyed some of the news that's coming out of this. And just wanted to come in here, chat with you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Let me know if you have any comments, any questions, whatever, or if you want to see any type of content in this comment. I'd be happy to come back here and cover it. So hopefully you had a good one. Stay in touch. I'll see you very soon. This is Beto on Base again. Please like, subscribe, do all that good stuff. I really appreciate you watching. I appreciate you commenting as well. And I'll see you on the next one.